They say there are three types of species in the galaxy: the prey, the predators, and the survivors. The Galactic Council always believed humanity fell into the first category. Soft, emotional creatures who cried at the loss of single individuals, who built memorials for their dead, who wrote poetry about peace. They looked at Earth's blue oceans and green forests and saw weakness. They looked at humanity's extended hand of friendship and saw desperation. They were wrong about which hand we were extending. For 200 years, humanity had played the game. We smiled at their condescension. We bowed to their regulations. We accepted trade deals that barely kept our colonies fed. We bit our tongues when they called us the children of the galaxy. We nodded when they explained, with infinite patience, why we couldn't have seats on the Security Council, why our ships couldn't carry certain weapons, why our very nature made us unsuitable for the burden of true galactic citizenship. And all the while, we prepared, because humanity learned one crucial lesson in our bloody history. Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is what you have when you're too dangerous to attack. The Council forgot that lesson. Or perhaps they never knew it. When Council Fleet Admiral Zaxtar stood before the Assembly of 10,000 Worlds and declared that humanity had 48 hours to surrender complete sovereignty or face corrective military action, he expected fear. He expected pleading. He expected Earth's delegation to beg for mercy, to offer concessions, to crumble like every other species that had faced the Council's ultimatum. He did not expect Admiral Sarah Chen to smile. He did not expect her to lean back in her chair, that strange human expression playing across her features, and say two words that would echo through galactic history. Finally, this is the story of what happened next. This is the story of why the galaxy now marks time as before Chen and after Chen. This is the story of the 48 hours that changed everything. This is the story of why you should never ever mistake humanity's mercy for weakness. The chamber of the Galactic Council stretched 3 kilometers in diameter, its domed ceiling displaying a perfect holographic representation of the galaxy itself. Thousands of species filled the tiered seats, their forms ranging from the crystalline Shardari to the gaseous Velnoth colonies, each contained in their specialized atmosphere bubbles. The air hummed with translation fields, converting the cacophony of alien languages into comprehensible streams of data. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in the human delegation's assigned space, a modest alcove barely visible from the central platform. After 2 centuries of membership, humanity still occupied one of the smallest sections in the entire assembly. Most species didn't even know humans had a representative present during council sessions. That was exactly how Sarah preferred it. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, with close-cropped black hair graying at the temples. Her dress uniform was crisp, decorated with more medals than most species could earn in 10 lifetimes. But medals meant nothing here. In the Council's eyes, she was just another representative from a backwater species barely worth acknowledging. Next to her sat Commander James Morrison, her second in command, a mountain of a man who looked uncomfortable in the tiny human-sized chairs the Council provided. His hand rested near his datapad, fingers drumming a nervous rhythm that Sarah recognized from 20 years of serving together. "They're actually going to do it," James whispered, his voice barely audible even with their privacy field active. "After all this time, they're actually going to do it." Her eyes remained fixed on the central platform where Fleet Admiral Zaxtar was making his way to the speaking podium. The Krixnar commander stood nearly 12 feet tall, his 4 arms ending in razor-sharp talons that had evolved for tearing into prey. His species had conquered 47 worlds before joining the Council, their military might legendary across the galaxy. His crimson exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber's lights, each plate engraved with the names of enemies he had personally defeated. "Esteemed members of the Council," Zaxtar's voice boomed through the chamber, his translator rendering his clicking mandibles into perfect galactic standard. "We gather today to address a matter of grave importance, a matter that threatens the very stability of our peaceful union." Sarah felt dozens of alien eyes turned toward the human delegation. She maintained her neutral expression, the one she had perfected over years of diplomatic service. "Show nothing. Give them nothing. The species known as humanity," Zaxtar continued, his 4 eyes swiveling to fix directly on Sarah, "has repeatedly violated Council regulations. They have established colonies in restricted zones. Their merchant vessels have been found carrying prohibited materials. Their military exercises exceed the parameters established for junior species. Most concerning, they have refused to submit their military capabilities for Council inspection as required by the Treaty of Integration. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Several species representatives made gestures that their cultures used to express agreement or concern. The Valkyrie delegate, a slug-like being the size of a small transport ship, released a cloud of pheromones that translated to, "About time someone addressed this issue." Sarah noticed Ambassador Tharn of the Quelon Collective watching her with all six of his eyes. The Quelon had always been humanity's closest allies on the Council, though ally was perhaps too strong a word. They had voted against the most egregious anti-human proposals, which was as close to friendship as one could expect in Council politics. Now, even Tharn looked troubled, his chromatic skin shifting through shades of concerned blue. "The Council has been patient," Zaxthar said, spreading his forearms wide in a gesture that managed to be both magnanimous and threatening. "We have given humanity countless opportunities to comply with our regulations. We have extended deadline after deadline. We have offered assistance, guidance, and the wisdom of species far older and more experienced than your young civilization." James's hand clenched into a fist. Sarah touched his arm gently, a warning to maintain composure. "Not yet, not quite yet. But patience has its limits," the Fleet Admiral continued. "When a species refuses to abide by the laws that govern our peaceful union, when they place their own interests above the collective good, when they show such blatant disregard for the order that has maintained galactic peace for 12,000 years, action must be taken." The holographic galaxy above dimmed, replaced by a three-dimensional display of human space. 37 star systems glowed in soft blue, Earth pulsing at the center like a beacon. To anyone familiar with galactic geography, it looked pathetically small. Humanity's entire interstellar empire could fit in a corner of Krixnar territory with room to spare. "The Council's patience has ended," Zaxthar declared, his voice rising to fill the enormous chamber. "Humanity will submit to complete Council oversight within 48 standard hours. You will open your military installations for inspection. You will provide detailed manifests of all military assets. You will surrender command of all armed vessels to Council authority. You will accept Council governors for each of your colony worlds." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of translation fields seemed to quiet, as if the station itself was holding its breath. "Failure to comply," Zaxthar said, each word falling like a hammer, "will result in corrective military action. The Council fleet will enforce compliance. Your vessels will be impounded. Your colonies will be occupied. Your homeworld will be placed under Council administration until such time as humanity demonstrates the ability to participate responsibly in galactic affairs." Sarah felt something shift in her chest. A door that had been closed for so long, locked and barred and weighted down with patience and diplomacy and carefully constructed pretense, finally swinging open. She had waited 200 years for this moment. Humanity had waited 200 years for this moment. "Do you understand the terms of this ultimatum?" Zaxthar asked, his eyes fixed on Sarah. "Do you comprehend the consequences of non-compliance?" The movement was smooth, unhurried, almost casual. She straightened her uniform jacket, adjusted her collar, and stepped forward to the edge of the human delegation's alcove. From there, she could be seen by most of the assembly, though she still looked tiny compared to the towering forms of most galactic species. "Admiral Chen," Zaxthar said, managing to inject condescension into even her name. "I asked if you understand." Sarah looked up at the holographic display of human space, at those 37 blue stars that represented everything her species had built among the cosmos. Then she looked at Zaxthar, at his confident stance, at the casual arrogance in every line of his armored body. She looked at the assembled species, at the thousands of beings who had spent 2 centuries treating humanity like troublesome children. And she smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small quirk of her lips, barely noticeable. But in that smile was something that made several of the more perceptive species suddenly shift uncomfortably in their seats. It was the smile of someone who had been playing a game far longer and far better than anyone else realized. "I understand perfectly, Fleet Admiral," Sarah said, her voice calm and clear. "You have given humanity 48 hours to surrender? To comply with Council regulations," Zaxthar corrected sharply. "To surrender," Sarah repeated. Her smile widened just a fraction. "That's what you mean, isn't it? Strip away the diplomatic language, and you're demanding that we give up our sovereignty, our independence, our right to defend ourselves. You want us to become a client state, subservient to council authority. The council seeks only to maintain order, one of the Shadari representatives interjected, its crystalline form chiming with indignation. Your species has proven itself unable to self-govern according to galactic standards. Galactic standards? Sarah echoed. She looked around the chamber, her gaze sweeping across the assembled species. Standards set by the strong to control the weak. Standards that somehow always benefit those who already hold power. Standards that keep young species perpetually dependent on the Council's wisdom and guidance. This is not a debate, Admiral, Zaxtar snarled, his talons clicking against the podium in agitation. You will answer the question. Will humanity comply, or will you force the Council to take corrective action? The chamber waited. James looked at Sarah, silently willing her to say the right thing, to buy more time, to find some diplomatic solution that would delay the inevitable confrontation. Ambassador Farn leaned forward in his seat, all 6 eyes wide with what might have been hope or fear or both. Sarah took a deep breath. She thought about Earth, about the blue planet that had spawned a species too stubborn to stay contained to one world. She thought about the colonies, about families building new lives under alien stars. She thought about the fleet, waiting in the dark between the stars, ready for an order that she had prayed would never come, even as she prepared for it every single day. Most of all, she thought about 200 years of bowing and scraping, of accepting insults with a smile, of watching human merchants cheated in council ports, of seeing human scientists' discoveries claimed by other species, of enduring condescension from beings who treated humanity like a curiosity at best and a nuisance at worst. 200 years of restraint, 200 years of patience, 200 years of hearing the same refrain. You're too young, too aggressive, too emotional, too dangerous to be trusted with real responsibility in galactic affairs. 200 years of proving that humanity could play by their rules, could be civilized, could be peaceful, and now finally they were giving her permission to stop pretending. Finally, Sarah said, and her smile became something that made even Zaxtar take an involuntary step backward. Finally, the word hung in the air, heavy with implications that most of the council didn't yet comprehend. James closed his eyes, knowing exactly what that word meant, what signal it sent. Somewhere, in the dark spaces between stars, ships were receiving new orders, crews were moving to battle stations, weapons that had been kept carefully hidden were being brought online. Finally what? Zaxtar demanded, though uncertainty had crept into his voice for the first time. Sarah's smile didn't waver. You declared war, Fleet Admiral. That's what you just did, whether you want to use those words or not. And do you know what humanity has been doing for the past 200 years while you were busy patting us on the head and telling us to be good children? The chamber was utterly silent now. Every being present focused on the small human woman who stood at the edge of her species' tiny alcove, smiling like someone who had just heard the best news of her life. We've been preparing, Sarah said softly. We've been building. We've been planning. Waiting for one of you to finally give us a reason to show you what humanity really is when we stop being polite. She turned to James. Commander, please send the message. James nodded, his expression grim but determined. His fingers moved across his datapad, entering a code that he had memorized years ago, but hoped he would never use. A code that consisted of just 2 words. Message sent, he confirmed. Sarah turned back to address the council, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Fleet Admiral Zaxtar, you asked if I understood your terms. I do. And here are mine. You have 48 hours to withdraw your ultimatum, issue a formal apology to humanity, and grant us full Security Council status with all associated rights and privileges. The chamber erupted, thousands of beings expressing shock, outrage, disbelief, and in a few cases, dark amusement at the audacity of this tiny species. Zaxtar's mandibles clicked so rapidly his translator couldn't keep up, producing only a garbled stream of what were clearly profanities in his native language. You dare! He finally managed incomprehensible words. You insignificant, primitive, arrogant creatures dare to make demands of the Council? We could crush your entire species. Your pathetic fleet wouldn't last an hour against Council forces. Sarah's smile never wavered. Then I suppose we'll find out in 48 hours, won't we? The clock is ticking, Fleet Admiral. I suggest you use your time wisely. She turned and walked back to her seat with measured, unhurried steps. James fell in beside her, And together they gathered their materials and prepared to leave. The entire council watched in stunned silence as the human delegation made its way toward the exit. As she reached the door, Sarah paused and looked back one last time at the assembled species, at the beings who had spent 2 centuries underestimating humanity. "Oh, and Fleet Admiral," she called out. "One more thing. That inspection you wanted of our military capabilities? You're about to get it. Try to enjoy the show." Then Admiral Sarah Chen walked out of the council chamber, leaving behind 3,000 species to contemplate what they had just done. And one very specific question that was beginning to form in the minds of the more thoughtful beings present. What exactly had humanity been preparing for? They would find out soon enough. The human embassy on Council Station Sigma occupied what could charitably be called a maintenance closet compared to the palatial quarters of major galactic powers. Sarah had always found the tight quarters oddly comforting. It reminded her of submarine duty back when Earth's Navy still sailed oceans instead of stars. She stood in her private office, staring at the holographic display that showed human space in real time. Those 37 blue stars were beginning to change color, flickering to amber as fleet elements moved into position. James stood beside her, along with Captain Rebecca Torres from Naval Intelligence and Dr. Emil Kovacs, the civilian advisor who had been present for every major human decision for the past 50 years. "The council is in chaos," Rebecca reported, her fingers dancing across her datapad. "We're intercepting thousands of encrypted communications. Most species are demanding explanations from the Security Council. The Quellan delegation requested an emergency private meeting with us, but I told them we're unavailable." "Fine means well," Sarah said, not taking her eyes off the display. "But this has gone beyond diplomacy." "The Krixnar fleet is mobilizing," James added, highlighting several red icons appearing at the edge of human space. 3 battle groups, approximately 400 ships total. They're taking up positions around our outer colonies. Sarah nodded. It was exactly what she had expected. The Council would make a show of force, demonstrate their overwhelming military superiority, and assume humanity would crumble. Standard intimidation tactics that had worked on dozens of species before. "What they don't know," Dr. Kovacs said quietly, his elderly voice carrying the weight of decades spent preparing for this moment, "is that we've been ready for this scenario since the day we joined the Council." "Tell me the status," Sarah commanded. Rebecca pulled up a new display. "Ghost Protocol is fully active. All civilian vessels have reached designated safe zones. Colony defense grids are online. The manufacturing stations in the Kepler sector have completed their final production runs. And the fleet..." She paused, and Sarah saw something like pride flicker across the intelligence officer's face. "The fleet is ready, Admiral. All of it." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The real fleet. Not the handful of patrol ships and outdated cruisers that humanity showed to the Council's periodic inspections. Not the aging vessels that limped through Council space, always seeming to be on the verge of mechanical failure. The real fleet. The one that humanity had been building in secret for 200 years. "How long until the Council realizes?" Dr. Kovacs asked. "They already suspect something," Sarah replied. "My little speech made sure of that. But suspicion and knowledge are 2 very different things. They think we're bluffing. They think this is desperation, a weak species making noise before accepting the inevitable." "Are we sure about this?" James asked, and Sarah heard the concern in his voice. "Once we reveal what we've been hiding, there's no going back. Every species in the galaxy will know that humanity has been lying to them for 2 centuries. "We haven't been lying," Sarah corrected gently. "We've been surviving. There's a difference." The Council created rules specifically designed to keep young species weak and dependent. We chose not to play by those rules while making it look like we were. That's not dishonesty, that's strategy. An alert chimed. Rebecca checked her datapad and her expression hardened. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Fleet Admiral Zaxthar. It's marked Priority 1 Council Authority." "Put it through," Sarah said. The holographic display shifted to show Zaxtar's imposing form. The Krixnar commander looked even more intimidating in private communication, his 4 eyes blazing with barely contained rage. "Admiral Chen," he said, his translator barely managing to convey the venom in his tone. "You have made a grave mistake. The Council has authorized me to inform you that your pathetic display of defiance has only accelerated the timeline. You now have 12 hours, not 48, to accept Council authority." Or what? Sarah asked calmly. Or I will personally lead the fleet that reduces your colonies to ash, Zaxtar snarled. Do you comprehend the forces arrayed against you? 3 battle groups are already in position. That's just the advance force. Within 6 hours, I will have 12 battle groups surrounding your space. 15,000 ships, Admiral. 15,000 ships against your pitiful few dozen patrol boats. Sarah met his gaze without flinching. Is that supposed to frighten me, Fleet Admiral? It should terrify you, Zaxtar roared. I have conquered civilizations that had been spacefaring for millennia before your species learned to make fire. I have broken empires that spanned hundreds of systems. What makes you think your backward little colony can stand against the might of the Council? You're right, Sarah said, and she saw surprise flicker across Zaxtar's features. You have conquered civilizations. You have broken empires. You're a very accomplished warrior, Fleet Admiral. But you've made one critical error. And what is that? Sarah's expression hardened. You've never fought humanity before. You've never faced a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. You've never encountered an enemy that considers warfare not just a necessity, but a science. You want to know what makes me think we can stand against you. She leaned closer to the display. Because while you were conquering species that had never experienced real war, we were annihilating each other with nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, and weapons you can't even imagine. While you were accepting surrenders from civilizations that valued peace above survival, we were learning that the only thing that stops a predator is a bigger predator.
You think your 3 battle groups scare me?
Fleet Admiral, my species invented total war. You're about to learn the difference between conquest and extermination. Zaxtar's mandibles clicked rapidly. Brave words from someone who commands a fleet that doesn't exist. We've monitored your military production for 2 centuries. We know exactly how many ships you have, and it's nowhere near enough to challenge even one of my battle groups. You know exactly what we've let you see, Sarah corrected. Tell me, Fleet Admiral, do you know what the human word ghost means? Before Zaxtar could respond, every display in his command center began screaming warnings. Sarah watched his 4 eyes widen as data flooded across his screens. What is this? He demanded, but Sarah could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. That, Sarah said with satisfaction, is the sound of your tactical senses finally seeing what's been there all along. We have a saying in human military doctrine. If you're in a fair fight, your tactics suck. We've never believed in fair fights, Fleet Admiral. We believe in overwhelming force, deception, and striking when the enemy thinks they're safe. The holographic feed from Zaxtar's bridge showed pure chaos. Officers were shouting in multiple languages. Tactical displays that had shown clear space around human colonies were now lighting up like festival decorations. Ships, hundreds of ships, thousands of ships, appearing out of nowhere, their stealth systems deactivating simultaneously across dozens of star systems. Impossible, Zaxtar breathed, staring at his screens. Our sensors would have detected construction on this scale. Our intelligence network would have reported it. This is impossible. Your sensors detected exactly what we programmed them to detect, Sarah explained. As for your intelligence network, did you really think every human scientist who defected to other species was genuine? That every human merchant who accidentally leaked information was incompetent? We've been feeding you exactly the intelligence we wanted you to have for 200 years. Rebecca pulled up a new tactical display on Sarah's end, showing the true scope of what was being revealed. The Ghost Fleet, as they had codenamed it, was humanity's greatest secret. 200 years of hidden construction in the dark spaces between stars, manufacturing stations disguised as mining operations, shipyards built inside asteroids, a fleet that had been assembled piece by piece, always out of sight, always one step ahead of Council intelligence. 3,672. Not patrol boats, not outdated cruisers. Warships designed from the ground up to fight and win against species with thousands of years more experience. Every lesson humanity had learned from its own brutal history, every innovation that had been developed in secret, every advancement in weapons technology that other species had overlooked in their complacency. You're looking at 4,200 vessels, Fleet Admiral, Sarah said, though that number was slightly exaggerated. Let him worry about ships that might not even exist. Every one of them crewed by people who volunteered for a mission they knew might mean war with the entire galaxy. Every one of them equipped with weapon systems that your species hasn't seen before because we invented them specifically for this scenario. This is an act of war, Zaxthar snarled. No, Sarah corrected coldly. You declared war when you issued that ultimatum. We're simply responding to it. And here's what's going to happen now, Fleet Admiral. Your 3 battle groups are going to withdraw from human space immediately. Every Council vessel currently within 50 light years of any human colony has exactly 1 hour to begin retreat procedures. Or what? Sarah's expression became ice. Or we demonstrate exactly why humanity's name should have terrified you from the moment we reached the stars. You want to see our military capabilities? You want that inspection you demanded? Fine. We'll start with your 3 battle groups. I'm giving your ships 1 hour to withdraw. Any vessel still in human space after that deadline will be considered a hostile combatant and dealt with accordingly. You cannot be serious, Zaxthar said. But Sarah could see the calculation in his eyes. He was reassessing, running numbers, trying to figure out if humanity was bluffing. I've never been more serious in my life, Sarah replied. And just so you understand the position you're in, let me make this very clear. Every species in the Council has rules of engagement, protocols for civilized warfare, limits on what weapons can be used, what targets are legitimate, what tactics are acceptable. We know all those rules, Fleet Admiral. We helped write some of them, and we're prepared to follow them exactly. She paused, letting that sink in before delivering the killing blow. Unless you give us a reason not to. You wanted to see humanity without the mask of civilization we've been wearing? You wanted to know what we're really capable of? Push us, Fleet Admiral. Test our resolve. Find out what happens when you take the leash off the only species in the galaxy that figured out how to split atoms before they figured out how to leave their home planet. The transmission ended abruptly from Zaxthar's end. Sarah suspected he needed time to consult with the Council, to verify what his senses were telling him, to figure out how this had happened. That went well, James said dryly. He'll report to the Council, Rebecca predicted. They'll debate. The Shardari will demand verification. The Velkari will propose a diplomatic solution. The Quellan will try to mediate. And while they're talking, they'll be scanning human space with every sensor they have, trying to figure out if we're bluffing about our capabilities. Let them scan, Sarah said. We've hidden the fleet for 200 years. A few hours of scrutiny won't reveal everything. And what they do see will make them think very carefully about their next move. Dr. Kovacs moved to stand beside Sarah, his old eyes studying the tactical display. You realize that even if we win the immediate conflict, the galactic community will never trust us again. They'll see this as the ultimate betrayal. They saw us as children to be managed, Sarah replied. Now they'll see us as a threat to be respected. I'll take respect over trust any day. An alert chimed again. This time it was Rebecca's personal secure channel. She checked it, and her expression shifted to something between alarm and grim satisfaction. Admiral, we're receiving reports from our deep cover assets throughout Council space. The revelation of the Ghost Fleet has triggered exactly the response we predicted. 47 species have requested emergency Council sessions. 8 species with territorial disputes with the Krixnar are mobilizing their own fleets, using our situation as cover. Velkari hierarchy just recalled all their ambassadors from Krixnar space. This was the second part of humanity's strategy. The Council wasn't a unified entity. Despite how it presented itself, it was a collection of species with different interests, old grudges, and carefully balanced power dynamics. Humanity's revelation wasn't just about military capability. It was about showing every species that the rules could be bent, that the Council's authority wasn't absolute, that change was possible. How many species are calling for Zaxthar's removal? Sarah asked. 19 so far, Rebecca replied. The number's climbing. Turns out a lot of species don't appreciate that the Fleet Admiral unilaterally shortened your deadline without Council approval. The legal delegation from the Crysterium is already filing formal complaints. James allowed himself a small smile. So we're not just fighting the Council. We're making them fight themselves. Divide and conquer, Dr. Kovacs murmured. The oldest strategy in warfare. Turn your enemy's strength into weakness, their unity into discord. The question is, Sarah said, will Zaxthar withdraw, or will his pride demand that he attack anyway? 37 minutes later, sensor readings from the outer colonies showed the Krixnar battle groups holding position. Not withdrawing, not attacking, just waiting. He's calling our bluff, James said quietly. Or preparing to attack, Rebecca countered. Our tactical analysis suggests he's reorganizing his forces into assault formation. Sarah studied the enemy positions. 3 battle groups, 400 ships total, arranged around humanity's most vulnerable colonies. One word from her and the shooting would start. One word and 200 years of careful preparation would be tested in actual combat. One word and humanity would find out if their weapons, their tactics, their crews were really as good as they believed. Admiral, Rebecca said urgently, we're detecting weapons charging on the Krixnar flagship. Multiple ships are going to combat status. Our forces? Sarah asked. Weapons hot, shields up, waiting for your order. The clock on the tactical display showed 58 minutes since Sarah had issued her ultimatum. 2 minutes until the deadline. He's going to do it, James breathed. He's actually going to attack. Sarah watched the seconds tick down. Somewhere out in the dark, thousands of human crew members were at their stations. Hands hovering over weapons controls, eyes fixed on targeting displays, hearts pounding with the knowledge that they might be about to make history. On the other side, Krixnar warriors who had never known defeat prepared to teach these upstart humans a lesson about their place in the galactic order. 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds. Sarah took a deep breath and opened a fleet-wide channel. Every human ship in space would hear her next words. Every crew member who had trained for this moment. Every volunteer who had believed in humanity's ability to stand on its own. Every person who had kept the secret of the Ghost Fleet for years or decades. All vessels, she said, her voice steady and clear. This is Admiral Chen. You know your orders. You know your targets. You've trained for this your entire lives. Some of you were born in space, raised on ships built in secret, educated in tactics that no other species understands. Others came from Earth, from colonies, from every corner of human space. But you all have one thing in common. She paused, looking at her small team in the cramped embassy office. James, who had followed her through every posting for 20 years. Rebecca, who had built human intelligence networks from nothing. Dr. Kovacs, who had dedicated his entire life to ensuring humanity's survival. You're all human, Sarah continued. And that means you don't give up. You don't back down. You don't surrender when the odds look impossible. Our species has faced extinction 100 times and we're still here. We've stared into the abyss and made it blink. Today, we show the galaxy why that is. On the tactical display, the first Krixnar weapons fired, and humanity fired back. The war for humanity's future had begun. The first shots of the war lasted exactly 7 seconds. That was how long it took for the Krixnar battle group surrounding the human colony of New Harmony to realize that every tactical assumption they had made was catastrophically wrong. Fleet Admiral Zaxthar watched from his flagship, the Crimson Conquest, as his forward elements engaged what they had identified as a small human defensive force. 12 patrol vessels. Outdated designs, minimal threat. Standard doctrine called for an overwhelming show of force followed by immediate surrender demands. His ships opened fire with plasma cannons that could reduce asteroids to vapor. The human ships vanished, not destroyed, not retreating, simply gone, as if they had never existed. Sensor ghost, his tactical officer reported, confusion evident in his clicking mandibles. They're using some kind of advanced stealth system. We're compensating. The officer never finished the sentence. The Crimson Conquest shuddered as something impacted its shield generators. Warning alarms blared across the bridge. Damage reports flooded in from across the battle group. Impossible! Zaxthar snarled. Our shields are rated against... Then another. Ships that had been invisible seconds ago materialized at point-blank range, having somehow bypassed every defensive screen and early warning system. But these weren't the outdated patrol boats the Council had catalogued. These were sleek, aggressive designs that moved like predators, their weapons firing in precise, coordinated patterns. Humanity had studied 2 centuries of Krixnar tactics. They knew exactly where the shield generators were located, exactly how the Krixnar fleet formation distributed its defensive capabilities, exactly which systems would cause maximum disruption if disabled. And they had designed weapons specifically to exploit those weaknesses. Return fire, Zaxthar commanded. All batteries, maximum power. The Krixnar fleet responded with the discipline of a force that had conquered dozens of civilizations. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and kinetic kill weapons lit up the darkness of space. Enough firepower to level a continent concentrated on the human vessels. And missed. The human ships moved in ways that defied standard tactical projections. They didn't maneuver like spacecraft with limited thrust and predictable acceleration curves. They twisted, spun, and changed vectors with an agility that suggested their internal dampening systems operated on principles the Council didn't understand. Every Krixnar officer had studied the performance specifications humanity had submitted to the Council. Those specifications were lies. "Sir, we're being jammed," the communications officer reported. "Someone is broadcasting massive amounts of electronic noise across all frequencies. Our tactical coordination is degrading." On the tactical display, Zaxtar watched his perfect battle formation begin to fragment. Ships that should have been sharing targeting data and coordinating their fire were operating independently, their advanced tactical networks reduced to basic visual range engagement. The humans were doing to the Krixnar exactly what the Krixnar had done to their last 7 military opponents: isolate, disorient, and eliminate. The difference was that humanity had learned from the Krixnar's own tactics and improved on them. "Focus fire on coordinates 77 Mark III, Zaxtar ordered, identifying what appeared to be a human command ship. 50 vessels shifted their weapons toward the target. Enough concentrated energy to punch through any known defensive system. The human ship's shields absorbed the first salvo completely. The second salvo actually seemed to make the shields stronger, as if the ship was somehow converting incoming energy into additional defensive power. The third salvo never happened, because 3 of the Krixnar vessels targeting the human ship lost power to their weapon systems simultaneously, their energy cores disrupted by some kind of localized electromagnetic pulse. "What are they firing at us?" Zaxtar demanded. "What kind of weapons are these?" "I don't know, sir," the tactical officer admitted. And Zaxtar heard fear in his subordinate's voice for the first time in their 20 years of service together. "Our databases have no record of these weapon signatures. They're unlike anything the Council has ever encountered." That was because humanity had spent 200 years developing weapons based not on incremental improvements to known technology, but on fundamental reimagining of warfare itself. While the Council refined plasma cannons that had existed for millennia, humanity had been weaponizing quantum entanglement, gravitational manipulation, and theoretical physics that most species dismissed as impractical. Sarah Chen stood in the embassy's tactical center, watching the battle unfold across multiple displays. Each screen showed a different engagement, and each told the same story. The Krixnar had superiority in numbers, experience, and traditional firepower. Humanity had superiority in everything else.
Battle Group Alpha reports 53% enemy casualties, Rebecca announced. Our losses are negligible.
2 ships with minor damage, both already withdrawing to repair stations. Battle Group Beta is performing a perfect hammer and anvil, James added, watching his screen with professional appreciation. The Krixnar don't even realize they're being herded into a kill zone. Battle Group Gamma is requesting permission to demonstrate the Ragnarok protocol. Another officer called out. Sarah hesitated. The Ragnarok protocol was humanity's ultimate weapon, the one they had hoped never to use. A weapon so devastating that they had debated for 50 years whether it should even exist. But if they were going to make a statement, if they were going to ensure that no species ever threatened humanity again, permission granted, Sarah said. Limited demonstration. Target the Krixnar mining station in the Helix Nebula. Make sure it's evacuated first. Evacuating now, Rebecca confirmed. Station population is 15,000. Transport ships are pulling everyone out. Clear. The station is empty. On the tactical display, a single human vessel broke formation and accelerated toward the mining station, a massive structure that had been stripping asteroids for valuable minerals for 300 years. The ship, designated Prometheus, was smaller than most human cruisers but carried technology that made every other weapon humanity possessed look primitive. Ragnarok device charging, the weapons officer aboard Prometheus reported. Target locked, firing in 3, 2, 1. Throughout the galaxy, every species with the capability to observe the Helix Nebula turned their sensors toward a flash of light that briefly outshone the stars themselves. The mining station, a structure 30 kilometers in diameter and built to withstand asteroid impacts, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed in the conventional sense. Removed. Every atom of the station converted into pure energy in a cascade reaction that humanity had nicknamed forced vacuum decay, but that most physicists simply called impossible. The silence on council channels lasted exactly 12 seconds. Then every single species with representation in the council began transmitting simultaneously. In the Crimson Conquest's command center, Fleet Admiral Zaxthar stared at the sensor readings from the Helix Nebula. His tactical officer had stopped even trying to provide reports. The entire bridge crew simply watched as the reality of their situation settled over them like a burial shroud. Humanity didn't just have a hidden fleet. They had weapons that made the Council's entire military doctrine obsolete. Sir, the communications officer said quietly, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Chen. Zaxthar almost laughed. Of course there would be a transmission. The humans had made their point. Now they would dictate terms. Put it through, he said. Surprised by how tired his own voice sounded, Sarah Chen appeared on his display, and Zaxthar noticed something that he had missed in their earlier confrontation. There was no triumph in her expression, no gloating, just a profound weariness that reminded him uncomfortably of his own feelings at that moment. Fleet Admiral Zaxthar, Sarah said formally, your forces have fought bravely, but I hope the last hour has demonstrated that this conflict can only end one way. I'm offering you the opportunity to withdraw your ships without further losses. You have my word that humanity will not pursue or attack any vessel that begins immediate retreat procedures. Zaxthar looked at his tactical displays. 47 ships lost, another 93 damaged. His perfect battle groups reduced to scattered formations desperately trying to avoid annihilation. And the humans were offering him terms, not demanding surrender, not celebrating their victory, just offering him a way to save what remained of his fleet. Why, he asked, you've won. You could destroy us completely. Why show mercy? Sarah was quiet for a moment before responding. Because we never wanted this war, Fleet Admiral. We prepared for it, yes. We built the weapons to win it, yes. But we never wanted it. Every ship you lost today represents lives we would have preferred not to take. We're not conquerors. We just want to be left alone to chart our own course among the stars. The Council will never accept this, Zaxthar said. Even if I withdraw, others will come. They will bring the full might of galactic civilization against you. Let them try, Sarah replied. But before they do, I suggest they watch the recording of this engagement very carefully. I suggest they study what happened to your battle groups. And I suggest they ask themselves one very important question, which is, if this is what we're willing to show the galaxy in the first hour of conflict, what do we still have hidden? The transmission ended. Zaxthar looked at his remaining ships, at his crew members who had believed themselves to be invincible warriors, at the tactical displays that showed a battlefield completely dominated by a species the Council had dismissed as inconsequential. Signal fleet-wide retreat, he ordered. All vessels are to withdraw from human space immediately. Set course for Council Station Sigma. As the Krixnar fleet began its withdrawal, similar scenes played out across every engagement zone. The Council forces, having suffered casualties they hadn't thought possible, retreated in disorder. Some went quietly. Others fired parting shots that the human fleet easily evaded. None achieved anything except confirming what the entire galaxy was beginning to realize. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was perhaps the most dangerous species to reach the stars in 12,000 years of recorded galactic history. The Council reconvened in emergency session 18 hours after the fighting stopped. The enormous chamber was packed with delegates from every member species, all demanding explanations, answers, consequences. The holographic galaxy above the assembly had been replaced with tactical recordings from the battle, showing again and again the moments when human ships had outmaneuvered, outfought, and overwhelmed forces that should have crushed them. Ambassador Tharn of the Quellon Collective stood to speak, his chromatic skin shifting through shades of agitated purple. We must address the fundamental question before this body. How did this happen? How did an entire species hide a military force of this magnitude without our knowledge? Because we weren't paying attention, a voice said from the human delegation's alcove. Sarah Chen stood, her small form somehow commanding the attention of the entire assembly. Because you made assumptions about us based on limited data and cultural prejudices. Because you saw what you expected to see and didn't look any deeper. You lied to us, the Shidari representative chimed accusingly. You submitted false reports. You violated 100 different council regulations. We survived, Sarah corrected. The council creates regulations specifically designed to keep young species weak, to maintain the existing power structure, to ensure that species like the Krixnar and the Velkari and yes, the Shadari maintain their dominance. You didn't want members, you wanted clients. Well, humanity isn't interested in being a client state. And what are you interested in? Zaxthar asked. He stood on the main platform, his armored form bearing new scars from the battle. Conquest? Revenge? You have the power now to make demands. Sarah shook her head. We're interested in respect, in being treated as equals, in having an actual voice in how this galaxy is governed. We want a seat at the table, Fleet Admiral. Not to dominate, but to participate as full members of the galactic community. After demonstrating weapons that could destroy entire planets, the Valkyrie delegate gurgled. After revealing capabilities that make you the most powerful military force in known space, you expect us to believe you want peace? I expect you to believe we want to be left alone, Sarah said firmly. Look at our history. Look at our actions. In 200 years of Council membership, humanity has never initiated a conflict. We've never claimed territory that wasn't legitimately ours. We've never imposed our will on another species. We've simply refused to accept your attempts to impose your will on us. Dr. Kovacs stood beside Sarah, his elderly voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The Council operates on the assumption that might makes right, that the powerful dictate terms to the weak. Well, we've demonstrated that we're not weak, so by your own logic, we've earned the right to dictate our own terms. All we're asking for is what should have been granted 200 years ago: recognition as a full member of the galactic community with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species demanded sanctions, others called for acceptance of human terms. A few suggested immediate negotiation before humanity decided to demonstrate more of its hidden capabilities. The debate raged for hours, voices raised in dozens of languages, philosophies clashing with practical concerns, fear warring with rationality. Finally, Ambassador Tharn stepped forward, raising all 6 of his hands for silence. The gesture was significant enough that the chamber gradually quieted. Perhaps, he said carefully, we should stop debating what humanity has done and start considering what comes next. The truth is clear to anyone willing to see it. Humanity is powerful enough to defend its sovereignty. No amount of military force will change that without devastating losses that no council member is willing to accept. So we have 2 choices: accept them as equals, or waste resources in a conflict that serves no one's interests. The Quellan are correct, another voice called out. One of the Cytherian representatives, a species known for their pragmatism. We can either adapt to this new reality or cling to a status quo that has just been irrevocably shattered. I vote for adaptation. One by one, species began to voice their positions. Some reluctantly, others with surprising enthusiasm. The younger species in particular seemed almost relieved that someone had finally challenged the Council's established hierarchy. Within 3 hours, a consensus began to emerge. Humanity would be granted full Security Council status. The restrictions on human military capabilities would be lifted. Human colonies would have the same rights and protections as those of any other species, and in exchange, humanity would agree to certain transparency measures and would contribute to Council peacekeeping operations. It wasn't everything Sarah had hoped for, but it was everything she had needed. As the Council formalized the agreement, James leaned over to Sarah and whispered, "We did it. 200 years of preparation, and we actually did it." Sarah nodded, but her expression remained serious. "We did. But now comes the hard part." "What do you mean?" "We've shown the galaxy what we can do when threatened," Sarah explained quietly. "Now we have to show them what we can do as partners. We have to prove that we deserve this seat at the table, not just through strength, but through the contributions we make to galactic civilization." Dr. Kovacs smiled. "You're already thinking about the next 200 years, aren't you?" "Someone has to," Sarah replied. "We've changed the game, but the game isn't over. Now we have to figure out how to play it as equals rather than as underdogs." The council session ended with formal recognition of humanity's new status. As Sarah left the chamber, she noticed several younger species representatives waiting to speak with her, species that had also chafed under council restrictions, that had also felt marginalized by the established powers. They looked at her with a mixture of awe and hope. "Admiral Chen," one of them said, a representative from the Dralian Confederacy, "what you've accomplished here, it gives others hope. Hope that the council can change, that the galaxy can evolve." Sarah considered her response carefully. "The council can change, But only if we make them. Only if we have the courage to stand up for ourselves and the wisdom to know when we've made our point. Change is possible, but it's never easy. As she walked back to the human embassy for the last time, Sarah thought about the message she had sent hours ago that had triggered the Ghost Fleet's revelation. 2 words that had changed everything. Finally. Finally. They had finally proven that humanity belonged among the stars. Not as children to be managed, but as equals to be respected. They had finally demonstrated that mercy should never be mistaken for weakness. They had finally taken their place in a galaxy that had underestimated them for 2 centuries. But more importantly, they had finally shown themselves what they were truly capable of when pushed to the limit. Sarah stopped at a window overlooking the Council Station's docking bay. Outside, human ships moved in formation, their stealth systems inactive now, their true capabilities on full display for any species that cared to observe. They were beautiful and terrible, those ships. Beautiful in their engineering elegance, terrible in what they represented. A weapon humanity had hoped never to use, now revealed to the galaxy, but also a shield that would protect humanity's freedom for generations to come. Commander Morrison found her there, looking out at the fleet. "Orders, Admiral!" Sarah smiled, and this time there was no threat in it, only quiet satisfaction. "Send the signal," Operation Ghost concludes. "Begin Operation Dawn." "The dark is over," Sarah explained. "Time to start building something in the light. The Council wanted to see what humanity could do in war. Now let's show them what we can do in peace." As the message went out across human space, crews aboard the Ghost Fleet began new procedures. Ships that had been designed for stealth shifted to civilian configurations. Weapons platforms converted to research stations. Soldiers became scientists. Warriors became diplomats. Humanity had proven it could fight. Now it would prove it could build. Across the galaxy, species watched and wondered what would come next. Some with fear, some with hope, all with a new understanding that the universe had changed irrevocably. The old order, where power and age determined status, had been challenged. A new era was beginning, one where capability mattered more than tradition, where respect was earned through action rather than granted through longevity. And at the center of it all stood a small woman who had smiled when war was declared and had shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their tactics or their hidden fleets. It was their refusal to accept limitations on what they could become. Admiral Sarah Chen looked out at the stars and thought about the future, about the species they would meet, the challenges they would face, the role humanity would play in shaping galactic civilization. The Council had tried to keep them small, manageable, controlled. Instead, they had made humanity exactly what they feared most: equals. And that, Sarah thought with a smile, was exactly as it should be. Finally.